chapter 4.1, part 1. We're in part 4 of the book themes. That's where we're going to start. So a couple things before I get started on the PowerPoint is that in our course, we are starting with chapter 4, which is the themes and why people make art, how some structures are built to some degree, and the reasoning behind it. So there's chapters 4.1. It goes. There are several chapters in this part of the book, part 4, and it goes 1 through 10. That's the way they do the chapters in this book. So it's a little bit different or unusual, perhaps, if you haven't encountered a book like this. So the 4 parts of our book, parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, do come in order. I'm starting with part 4, then we're going to go to part 1 and part 2. We are not going to study part 3. That is more of a historical context, and we want to sort of keep it to how and why things are made, if that makes sense. There is a lot of reference to chapter 3, and you'll find that throughout the book, and all the chapters sort of cross-communicate, and that's a really helpful thing to give you a little more context, and you'll see that as we go forward. The other thing I'm going to mention is these videos get chopped up. There's only so much memory space that it allows to upload to YouTube and to upload to Canvas. So, for instance, this is chapter 4.1, part 1, or first video is maybe a better way for you to understand it. So we're going to get into community art and community objectives, and sometimes we're dealing with artwork that is made by a specific artist. Sometimes we're dealing with work that is generated by a community in a specific kind of way. Certain things like masquerades with certain African cultures, these are mostly the community at large, could be everyone. Sometimes it's just specific people, but they take on the spirit world with different masks and so on. So sometimes it's that kind of a temporary body-based artwork that is a communal activity. Other times it's a building or a structure. Sometimes it's a sculpture, if that makes sense. Usually it's about shared beliefs or experiences, and then public places, usually we're outside. Buildings, of course, are outside. A lot of large sculptures outside. And then communities do come together to build these, as we just mentioned, visit and then acknowledge these important locations. So sometimes a shrine or a building or even a sculpture is built in a specific location because of the meaning of that location. An event occurred there, for instance, and then it's gonna some structures are gonna house different ceremonies. I just mentioned that masquerade. Sometimes that happens within a structure, like a church might have a ceremony such as a wedding or a funeral inside the church as opposed to outside. Some of that is split up, but at any rate, you have a specific structure for a ceremony. And then often they become iconic destinations, and we're going to look at an example here, is the Notre Dame Cathedral in France, in Paris, France. So a lot of people visit this iconic destination not as a Catholic or even as a Christian or believer, but they want to admire the structure and see the stained glass, excuse me, so you can see it here, this beautiful groin vaulted Gothic architecture and some of the other artwork that's around the edges here. And I'm going to upload, not for Notre Dame, but for Chartres, I will upload a really nice 360 image that you can kind of move around in. It'll be in this section with the other video, so look for that. Very interesting. You have to go to the link and you have to move around in the space, but it really gives you a sense of the space. At any rate, this originally, of course, was built in the Middle Ages in 1163 to 1250. It takes a very long time to build a building such as this. And this was built for pilgrims. Okay, pilgrimages were really important in Europe, also in Great Britain. and you would even go as far as, excuse me, as Israel. But some people, pilgrims restrain themselves just to the areas of Europe. Each cathedral or sometimes a smaller chapel or different, designations, different types of churches or sacred places would have a particular relic. For Notre Dame, it is believed that there's a relic, excuse me, from the true cross. There's a small piece that was kept from the wood from the true cross. Also, the holy lance used to pierce his side, and the crown of thorns that the Romans made to mock him. So these are kept somewhere. You can see different areas back here. Usually it's in an area like an apse. It's like in a little side area so that there's an ambulatory here that you can walk around, and you could go and you could visit these different areas with the shrine. And then the reliquary would be like a little sculpture, sometimes with a window, like a piece of glass, so you could see in and see the actual piece of wood that would be the cross. So each cathedral, each destination on a pilgrimage would have a specific relic, and people would go there to worship and to visit these particular relics. But also, we want to focus on the large scale of this cathedral. How many, you can't see it very well here, but there's a large amount of pews in here. There's a big seating area for multiple people so that many people could gather within this space. High vaulted ceilings are going to be reflecting the nature of the heaven and light, spiritual light coming through. And then these scenes here would depict different things from the Bible here, okay? So awe-inspiring structure, which goes to everybody. Walking into this space, you always, struck by the huge tall ceilings and the stained glass, and the overall architecture just has this sense of overwhelming nature and a spiritual nature, if you will. Unfortunately, Notre Dame itself in France burned in 2018. Not completely, mostly the roof area that you're looking at right here. And they're repairing it, but it remains a destination, if you will. But its primary purpose originally was for the pilgrims. So remember that, Middle Ages pilgrims, that's important, and it holds relics. Gothic architecture, that's the late Middle Ages. But now we visit it, whether we are Catholic or not, as a work of art, as a beautiful example of Gothic architecture. So it is a source of civic pride, stained glass windows. So that's important to note too, that the Gothic architecture has stained glass windows. When you're looking at Romanesque, which is another part of Middle Ages, it does not. So the spiritual light coming in has more window area, and that's part of this idea of the spiritual light of heaven coming through. And there's a really nice video that I'll load for you guys. You can't click on this. All right, so very, very different. Further back in history, in 72 CE, the year 72, I know it's hard for you to imagine time that has passed. The first time I actually got to visit Rome, the first time I visited Rome, I really couldn't conceive of something that old. I was from Los Angeles, and everything to me was like a movie set that would look anything like this, a few times that I had gotten to see things like that. And it was sort of like there was nothing behind it. It was a facade. It was fake. And the Colosseum and a few other structures in Rome really blew my mind. And I had a really hard time wrapping my head around 2,000 years of history. It was a very intense experience. I highly suggest you get to go to if you have a chance to go to any ruins. We have many in the southwestern United States, and there are some throughout the U.S. and Mexico that you can go see, and Central America, South America. There's a lot of things you can see, and it is really impressive to be in the presence of such a structure. Okay, original intent for our Colosseum was a sporting arena, much like our sporting arenas today. We even have the Los Angeles Coliseum named after this Roman structure. So this had many entrances. It has multiple floors. It has a basement area. All kinds of different events were held here, mostly battles or gladiatorial type conflicts, which are similar, in nature to our football conflicts. That's the closest thing. A lot of historians will say that it's the nearest to, quite violent. This is a 159 feet high, and it's 615 feet long, and it is meant to house, I think it's 45,000 to 55,000 people, and it's quite a feat of architecture and engineering. The Romans invent the arch, this that we see right here. This was really invented a little bit earlier with the Egyptians and the Etruscans and also the Mycenaeans, but the Romans really make it this true arch, and they employ this method repeatedly. So it gives this open structure, and then also a lot of weight can come down on that, and it's very strong. Okay, but you'll see a lot of architecture that is still standing, built 2,000 years ago by the Romans, arches and also domes, which we're going to get into later. So this would be filled with water at times to make mock sea battles, if you can imagine that. I still, even walking through there, can't imagine that. So there's also concrete, or it was called cimenta at the time of Rome. So it's kind of more like a cement, kind of a combination of rocks and concrete. So that was also used here. So this has stone and concrete. It's a combination of those two things. Some kind of bricks as well. The floor was wood, and then they would fill it with water. Just astounding to think about filling something 2,000-year-old structure with water, probably using tar and all kinds of other sort of water resistant materials to hold that water in. But mainly it was gladiatorial combat, and you've seen the movie Gladiator, hopefully, so you get some beautiful views of this. All right. A modern stadium that we have here is the stadium for the Dallas Cowboys in Arlington, Texas. Arlington is a suburb of Dallas. This is the AT&T Stadium. This is the largest dome structure in the world. Now, there are some, I want to say there are some detractors on that, partly because this is a moving domed roof, so it's not like in that dome shape the whole time, if that makes sense. See how this opens up? It's mechanized, so it comes open there. These windows also open. So if it's a nice day or the game is held in the daytime, they'd probably open up the windows. It isn't the largest stadium in the country, but it is one of the largest. And this was built in 2009. It's 10 years old. $1.15 billion to build this stadium. It's kind of amazing. So it's got a lot of interesting things, some large LCD screens. I think it's saying that there was the largest screen at the time. I don't know if that's still true. These kinds of things that deal with technology, they seem to change very quickly. Also has an art museum within the structure, so you can just kind of go and visit the stadium without seeing a game. But this is the Dallas Cowboys home, and it holds 80,000 spectators. I'm going to stop there.